Hello, and welcome to the Cutie Art Crusaders, episode 89 for March 18th, 2014. My name is RainbowPlasma. I'm the organizer and this week's editor of the podcast, and today I'm joined by...
Bernd01, the special guest coordinator and stuff of this podcast.
And that's literally it. It's
There's
just
no one else.
Bernd and I for this week. Now,
I'm Flutter Guy, and I giggle sometimes, and I do...
and I'm Atmospark, blah, 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 sarcastic comment. Flutter Guy's away. He is on some sort of business trip, I believe, of some sorts. So he's off doing that, and I think he's flying in like late tonight in terms of recording. So there was no point in or late tomorrow or whatever. So there's no point in getting things too crazy for him because he's on a flight. And Mr. Atmospark was supposed to be here, right, Bernd?
Yeah, he was here. He was here in the call, and we were talking about like the art we're gonna feature and stuff. And all of a sudden we hear this knock, 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 and then it's like, oh, his overly Australian accented parents are here. And then he's like, oh, I gotta go, because he wasn't expecting his parents till like lunch, and in Australia time it's what, 9 o'clock, 10
something
o'clock
like
there?
that.
So,
I don't know.
like
We've
2 hours
recently
from now?
changed with daylight savings time, so my calculations are all out the window.
Yeah.
His parents are really Australian though, like.
Oh my gosh, his mom's so funny.
Oh, like we listen to him, right? And he sounds Australian to us, but you forget he's actually got a fairly mild Australian accent.
That's super tame.
Yeah, compared to like, my goodness. Well, he's
His
also
mom
quite...
walks in the door. He's like, "Oh, good day, Atmospark." She's like, "You want some shrimp on the barbie?"
Oh man,
I'm pretty sure it's nothing what she sounded like, but
it's so sad to hear about those babies that were eaten by the dingoes. But it happens. It happens, right?
Australians.
So yeah, it's the Bernd and RainbowPlasma. No, it's the RainbowPlasma and Bernd show. I don't know why I'm putting you first.
How dare you?
I don't know why I'm putting you first.
Come on, you had it right the first time. It's alphabetical. Come on.
Nah. Well, if we were going to do it, we would just put like the words like RainbowPlasma and Bernd just mashed on top of each other. Just so that it was like impossible to read because both of us want to go first.
The Bernd and RainbowPlasma show. No, the RainbowPlasma and Bernd show.
The brand of Bernd show. Like it's just a mesh.
The Bernd Plasma show with rainbows.
With rainbows. Okay. Anyways, so speaking of our missing co-hosts, who now we have to talk about, great. Flutter Guy is having a birthday, or if you're listening to this, which you will be, because that's how things work. He had his birthday recently, so happy birthday, Flutter Guy. He's turning 20.
Yeah.
And yeah. Didn't you know it was his 20th birthday?
Yeah, those are some of the best years of your life, right?
Yeah. Years in his early/mid/late 20s. Best times of your life.
I like how in our Google Doc that we use to like organize episodes and stuff, it says talk about Ted's Burfadoodle.
Occasionally I can be cute, Bernd. Occasionally.
Happy Burfadoodle, Flutter Guy.
Yeah,
and you're something for years.
Yeah. I don't want to say I guess he doesn't really care. So he's turning 25.
He's 37.
He's actually 48.
We've said his age before on the show.
No, I don't mean that. I mean like I don't remember exactly. Okay, he's born in 89, right? So yeah, it's 25. He's turning 25.
Sure.
You're old. That's all I care about. You're old. You're very old.
We love you.
So, yeah.
He's only 3 years older than me. 2.5 technically.
He's 5 years older than me. Well, yeah, 5 years.
Nerd.
Yeah.
Right.
Anyways, so yeah, birthday. Make sure to wish the guy a happy birthday.
Go wish him happy Burfadoodles.
Absolutely. Give him much doodle for his burfa.
What do you even give someone for a Burfadoodle?
I don't know.
Sounds like that gross cake Dave gave me once.
Occasionally I say things, Bernd, and I don't know what the heck I'm talking about.
Hey, that's me all the time.
Like the podcast. Speaking of the podcast, who's doing stuff today? Like, it's funny because we usually do all the talking, but the other two like introduce everything else in the show. Like Flutter Guy does the art introductions, and Atmospark does the questions. So what do you want to do this week?
I want to introduce art.
Okay, then I'll do the questions.
All right.
Deal. We're really organized today. I'm glad. I'm glad.
This is fun. We're having fun here.
All right. We have fun.
All right.
All right, go ahead, bud.
Okay, bud. So I got to put my Flutter Guy face on. So our theme for this week is night, or nighttime night.
Right,
generic.
not with a K.
No, just dark out. You know, when the sun's not there, that's our theme.
No, go on. Yep.
Yeah. So
No, any more? Is that it?
I'm pretty sure that's it.
Okay.
Okay. Also, an additive to that, it's not Luna again. So it was really hard to find nighttime art that wasn't of Luna or Nightmare Moon, but we managed somehow.
So we did like a Luna episode, and then we did... Didn't we do like a separate...
We did a Nightmare Moon, and then we did a Princess of the Night.
Right, and then we did a Reflections episode, which was like 90% Luna.
Yeah.
So we decided in this episode that if we could help it, we would stray as far as possible from Luna.
It's really hard because there's a bunch of ones I want to feature Luna too.
It's very difficult. There is a lot of Luna out there, and a lot of good Luna pieces out there.
I know, right? Gosh.
But we did manage to stray from it, so...
All right, moving forwards.
Sorry to anyone who loves Luna.
We are sorry.
Sorry.
Bud. Okay,
Sorry.
so our first art piece, how do I do intros? Our first piece for this week, I think that's how Ted says it, is Cutie Art Crusaders Adventure by Arurara.
Good start. You get stuck with a name you can't pronounce. Yes.
Arurara.
Arurara.
I think Arurara.
How are you? This is why I advocate people to like say their username out loud before registering it, because if you say it and you're embarrassed, or if you can't say it, then it's probably not a good username.
In all fairness, I do believe this is a foreign artist. Let me get the exact location by clicking their profile. Yes, it's from Japan. So
is Arurara a thing in Japan? Because that doesn't sound like...
I don't judge cultures.
Okay. All right. So what does Arurara have for us today, Bernd?
Has a really lovely piece, which is really adorable with...
It's not so easy now. You always mock Flutter Guy, but it's hard, isn't it? You're like, this piece is really great.
I'm purposely
I like it.
mocking because I don't know. It's this thing that he always has to introduce it. It's really awesome.
Right.
Anyway, no.
So it's nighttime.
We have a super cute piece. It's cool. I know. I like this one. I'm glad we got to feature it because it has like super awesome uses of color and stuff. And I like the colors that are used. Yeah,
I was surprised at how much color like actually went into this piece.
Because when you think night, you think dark.
Yeah. I think people tend to occasionally... We saw a lot of monochromatic art pieces when we were looking through certain things in order to try and find the proper pieces for this episode. And I guess we kind of got bored of it because none of our pieces are monochromatic. The most monochromatic one still has like tons of colors in it. So yeah, this one definitely stood out as like, it's night, but that doesn't necessarily mean everything's blue. You know, like there's blues and then there's greens and then there's purples and
a yellow moon and an
white.
Orange ground and violet trees and shadows.
Yeah. It's nighttime, but it's not necessarily like horribly dark, I guess. Like nighttime doesn't necessarily have to mean dark depending on where you are. So
it's also extremely dramatic.
Is it?
Because of how the subject, the Crusaders, are being like spotlighted and illuminated by the moon. It, like them being like kind of small and having so much like huge vertical space above them is kind of like squishing them down, if you will, and kind of intensifying. So dramaticness is intensifies, if you will.
Stop. Yeah, I don't know what the backstory is here, other than they probably walked into the forest and then got scared and then are trying to find their way out of the forest or something like that. But there definitely seems to be some sort of focus with the moon, because you've got these matching colors of the yellow-orange in the sky and the yellow-orange on the ground. It's a great way to kind of connect the viewer's line of sight. And I think Apple Bloom's eyes also help to do that too, because the first thing that you look at in the piece is the ponies, because they're highlighted, right?
They're so bright.
And then you look at her eyes and you're like, well, what's she's looking at? And then you immediately go to the moon. I always enjoy looking at pieces for the first time, seeing what happens, and then analyzing how my eyes moved across it, and seeing how much manipulation was put in there, because it's amazing how many times I mean, manipulate is a harsh word, but you're kind of being guided to look at certain things in a certain order, and 99% of the time, if you do it well enough, you can get people to look at your piece in a certain way.
It's like we're looking at visual contextualization called artwork.
Exactly.
It's really weird.
So this piece does that. You know, it's a great example of that, where the first thing you'll probably look at is the ponies, and then you catch her eye, and then you'll look up at the moon, and there you go. That's the entire context for the piece. It's pretty great.
They're so adorable. Look at Sweetie Belle.
Sweetie Belle's adorable.
It's like
You're
freaking
right.
out.
You're right. Derpy's adorable.
Oh yeah, did we mention?
No, there's just like this like hiding little, looks like two-dimensional like epic scrunch face.
It's like
Derpy.
really awkward cutout drawn Derpy. It looked like it was just a picture of a Derpy the artist had done before previously and like cut it out and pasted it in there. Like it doesn't have shading, it doesn't have anything. It's just, this is Derpy.
Yeah, it's pretty goofy. I like it though. It adds something to the piece. I don't know what it adds, but it adds something.
Sure. Easter eggs. It's cute. I like the little what are those? Parasprites like floating there, like ominously.
Yeah, the glow effect is really cool.
Yeah, it's also pretty cool.
Yeah, those kind of match up with the eyes. I'm not sure if the eyes are supposed to be other creatures or more parasprites. They seem to be bigger.
A little bit of both, because there's some like angry eyes. I don't think parasprites can they?
Yeah, unless it's like a really, really big parasprite, like huge parasprite, big chompers. So, but yeah, like that. Glow effects are interesting, I find, because a lot of times you can go overboard and make it seem really fake. But if you get a nice dim glow that affects the surroundings properly, it can come off really nicely. And that's a big part, is that if you're going to make something glow, you have to recognize it as a source of light, no matter how dim that source might be. So you have to have it affect your surroundings within the piece. Also,
good use of foreground, midground, background too. I'm just kind of looking to see if there's any, what do you want us to word that? Like traditional thingies or whatever concepts that I like saw in it. So it's kind of looking at composition and stuff. I guess the big thing that stands out is, you know, tree root in your face in the foreground, like big, and then you've got the Crusaders in their little midground, and then the trees and stuff also just to recede in the background.
Yeah, I think I realized what bugs me.
Formal qualities. That was the word I was looking for.
Formal qualities.
I'm bad with words.
That it's okay, because I would not have understood what the heck you meant by formal qualities if you had not explained technical things.
But it makes
first.
me sound smart. That's the key.
Oh, good enough. I think I've recognized what is kind of putting me off about Apple Bloom the most, and it's the fact she doesn't have a bow. She's missing a bow, and it's
that's
like,
why she looks squished.
It's throwing me off, because normally she looks taller.
Who said that?
Because of her bow.
Yeah, because she's the tallest out of all of them because of her bow, right?
Right, exactly. So there's something that we were looking at this piece before, and we're like, this piece is great, and we're going to feature it anyways, but there's something strange about Apple Bloom, and it's because she's missing her bow. I mean, I'm not sure if that would fix everything in terms of like what we think is like
crudely
looking a bit strange.
Photoshop a bow on there. It's all better.
Bow. Yeah. But yeah, she's missing her bow, so that's weird. She should go into her bow closet.
I know, right? Her bow cabinet.
Get like 50 of them.
Her bow bidet or whatever you call that thing. Bidet, no, that's the wrong word.
A bow bidet.
Definitely not the right word. Squirting bows everywhere. All right.
You mean like wardrobe?
That's what, there's a word for that cabinet thing, like that sits there and it's like, it's an actual cabinet you hang coats in. I remember because my dad was telling me about it, and there's a fancy German word for it. And like the Germans have some random super huge like Kühlschrank or something, whatever that means. I don't know.
Okay, well, Kühlschrank and bidet are kind of far away from each other, so I'm not sure where you made the connection there. But
I was like, I think there's a name for something that's like, it's bidet or something. It's like some weird Frenchish based word that is a cabinet thingy, but it's probably it's a bench, and I just have, I don't know. I'm not a master of furniture. I just need to move on.
Well, I've been guided astray then, because I thought you were a master of furniture.
It's a bow Kühlschrank. Bodenkühlschrank. I just made a new word. There you go.
Bodenkühlschrank. Let's just stop this now before you dig yourself a deeper hole and I won't be able to talk to you anymore. So the colors in this piece we mentioned a little bit at the beginning, but I like the way that they use the entire color palette, even though it's nighttime. The greens are still very green. They're darker green, but they're not necessarily like super bluey green. The artist says, look, okay, the sky is blue. Some of the like higher up leaves are like bluer because of the night, and you got those like purples and stuff, but that doesn't mean that everything needs to have a blue filter on it, right? So
Yeah.
Apple Bloom, Scootaloo, Sweetie Belle, they all look like they're normal colors and still bright and vibrant, and like I was saying, the greens really come out as well.
There is kind of a play between warm and cool, like the background and sky and majority of the piece I'd say is really cool, like colored, but then like the ground being illuminated and the Cutie Art Crusaders, like their color palette actually feels really warm, and so does the moon with that little bit of violet around it and the yellow. So that kind of play between like warm light and then cool everything else.
Those clouds are really nice.
I think just a lot of things in this piece are nice, like clouds. I really like the trees, like that violet tree above them.
Yeah, it's a really nice color. It seems like it's really saturated, but in a way that is like harmful to the eyes.
And like the tree directly above them, a little to the left, like in the middle there, just like that one, the blue tree, I should say.
Oh, okay.
I really like that tree because it's like pretty much the same blue as the sky, right? But it has a little bit of dark stuff in there, and then a little touches of violet, and then on the outside it has like cyan touches of leaves.
Right.
So it's not really like that art, like the artist drew the tree. It just drew some of the darkness of the tree and then like the highlight of the tree, and then left it pretty much like the same color as everything else.
Oh, interesting.
And it looks like beautiful tree, right?
Oh, cool.
Because if you notice that the violet, it's just the like a dark blue and the light blue, but those violet touches in the very middle of the tree, we look at that and see it directly through the tree, but it's really just purple like thingies, right?
Yeah, and like in the upper leaves and stuff like that, some of it's
just cyan touches, which give you...
It could technically be transparent.
Yeah, exactly. So it's your brain is seeing those highlights and stuff and then reading it as like pieces of a tree. So like that's really cool and crazy. And that's also a sign that you can tell that the artist is like really experienced too. Because something that, you know, aspiring artists will start out when you draw a tree or draw anything or draw a thing is I'm going to physically draw this thing, not add touches that are going to tell us that this thing is there or exists. Right. It's kind of the same thing with sketching when we talk about leaving a background less detailed and then your focus more detailed. This is that same kind of thing where like the characters themselves, super detailed, outlined everything, but that tree, like in the background, it's just cyan, darker blues, and then some violets thrown in there, and it's literally probably just the same, that exact background color, untouched, you know?
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
I think it's my cue. This is my job. All right. So we have to move on to our next piece. So our next piece is My Little Pony Sleepless in Ponyville, at MLP-Sleepless in Ponyville by Husi. Yay!
I've noticed the more that we do this show, the more people have decided to start labeling their stuff with MLP at the very beginning. And I guess it's because artists are starting to branch out into more things, so they want to label all of their MLP thing. But man, does it ever make your titles look ugly? Like, can you imagine, like, just going into a gallery, right? Let's say we're hanging this art piece up in a gallery, right? What do you think sounds better? Like, oh, we've got this thing by Husi, Sleepless in Ponyville. It's like, ooh, very deep. I like it. It's a reference. Or MLP, Sleepless in Ponyville.
Well, part of that's presentation. So if there's actually some gallerist going like, behold this piece, MLP, Sleepless in Ponyville, obviously it's going to stand out a little bit. And also saying that we have art like this that is like pony fan art, strategically like being placed up in a gallery for people to like view is also a bit of a stretch. But you know.
But it's presentation, right? I mean, you talked about the fact that your teacher said to, this is a couple of weeks back or something like that, but your teacher said if you're going to make a signature, that if you want to put your signature in your piece, then you have to like consider that a part of your piece.
Exactly.
And like you have to integrate it into your piece, and like you can't expect people to like just ignore that and go and look at
he'll rate you on it.
Yeah,
he does.
Exactly. Like, so in my mind, even though it's not a part of the piece, in my mind, it's all part of the presentation, right?
Correct.
And I prefer titles that are more of like a presentable kind of title.
Yeah. I totally agree. I feel like we have to make some kind of small exception because it is generically fan art, because we are like a show about fan art.
Yeah, of course.
So now and then I feel like we can look past the like placement of MLP and stuff, and we could probably just read Sleepless and Ponyville. We just spell it out specifically because for archiving purposes, if anyone wants to go out of their way to look this piece up, they have to type that in, you know?
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Anyways, semantics aside,
it was a little point that I wanted to bring up about titles, because I'm starting to see it more. It's not a nitpick against Husi. A lot of people are doing it. It's just something I've noticed a lot from people recently.
Shame on yourselves.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's a lot to talk about in this piece, and there's three aspects, I think, in general that are kind of like the main things. And there's that central scene around the campfire with the ponies. There's the nature surrounding them with the beautiful trees, and then there's that sky. So I don't know what you want to start with first, or whether or not you just want to all tackle it at once. And if I know you're probably going to tackle it.
Let's do what you were talking about in the piece before this, where you're like, where does your eye land? And for me, it's funny because like when I first like look at this piece, even though the fire is really bright, I don't really notice the bottom portion of the piece, and I instantly look like up, like to the sky. And I think it's partly because of some of the trees are kind of like leading me and pointing me there, and also because of how dark the trees in the background are. I don't know, it's weird. So
yeah, like I would agree though. Like I feel the same way. I've been
yeah, like no matter how many times I'd kind of like stop and like to like step back and like look at this piece, I kind of see things and it's like, that's too small because I haven't zoomed out, and then I instantly go up to the sky. So I'm gonna zoom in on this. Make it big. Oh god, that's big.
What I did when I looked at this was I was also attracted to the sky, and what I do with a lot of these pieces when I'm trying to figure out where my eye goes is I will look away. Like while you were talking, I looked away and I looked at the wall or something, and then I looked back and I saw what happened, and my eye does tend to go up. And I think the interesting thing about that one is, and I want to see if this is an analytical thing. Well, first of all, the sky takes up more space than the ponies do, and that scene does. So that's one aspect of it. But the other aspect too is that the sky kind of comes down in like a semicircle. The top half of the piece, right? But the semicircle also it doesn't stop at the middle. It dips down below the middle of the piece. So when I start, I'm looking in the middle of the piece, right? And then from there, I'm already looking at the sky. So I'm like, oh, look at the sky, and I look up.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of things lead me up. Another thing that's also attributing is the horizon line, if you notice, because you mentioned how the sky takes up like the majority of the piece. The horizon line is also placed purposefully like super, super low. So like the characters and all the things that are in the scene are taking up, you know, like about an inch or two, or like, you know, less than a tenth of the space.
Yeah.
Like, I assume everyone knows what I mean by the horizon line, but like where the actual horizon or whatever ends is like pretty much where the ponies are sitting. Yeah. And then everything else is trees and then sky. And I feel it's also, there's so many things in the piece physically leading us upwards. Like the campfire is leading us upwards. Like the tent is leading us upwards. The trees are also leading us upwards. So
even our view angle is leading us upwards because
exactly. We're looking up at the sky, and we're also looking up at the ponies.
Yeah.
Like where we are placed is physically, if you like, our gaze is directed in the center of the piece, which is up. You know, above everything.
Yeah. And I like the composition in general because it makes it feel like, when I look at this piece, it makes it feel like more of a scene, more like it's an entire scene with many things, and a part of it is this campfire story. You know, like a small part of this nature scene is these people interacting with each other, but it's not the focus, right? It's not what this piece is about. It just happens to be a part of it. And I think that's really cool.
It's actually really randomly relevant, as I totally got in a conversation with a Brony on my campus about Brony artists, and he was trying to think of an artist that did these portraits of ponies and like kind of like placed with like weird Art Nouveau designs around them, and he was trying to remember if it was Harwick's art or Husi, and it was funny because I felt like some kind of weird, awkward spaghetti historian, and I was like, well, it's funny that you mentioned that because like I don't think it's Husi, because that artist is really what do you want to say, is really keen to or almost obsessed with painting specifically like huge landscapes and like scenes and like grand scenes. So almost all of Husi's art is like big open, like mountain scenes, forest scenes, just like really epic forced perspective, like scenery. Where Harwick's art is a lot more cartoony, has like sometimes like quirky things going on, and blah blah blah. And so I say it was probably much more likely Harwick's art, which is really random because I totally had that conversation yesterday. Hi, Nathan.
Well, it's kind of relevant, and like you said, you know, I think Husi tends to make these more. Complete's the wrong word, because that suggests that the other one is incomplete. It's just a different focus. That's the whole point. Like I said, in this one, the focus is on everything being a small part of the entire scene, whereas sometimes when you have the ponies up closer, it's like a portrait, the landscape is there to complement the characters who are the scene. But in this case, it's not. It's there's the entire scene with ponies being a part of it.
And how would you say that Husi as an artist in like his grand scheme and portfolio of artwork really likes to make that kind of stuff? For some reason, my brain is escaping the words of how you word that properly, like a smart individual.
What do you mean?
I don't know what I mean.
Well,
never mind. Ignore it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, the sky is beautiful. I mean, it's got really interesting, some sort of take on the Milky Way or something like that, or I'm not sure if that's supposed to be smoke. It's probably more of like a celestial body.
Cosmos?
Yeah. Some sort of cosmic thing.
It's
which
the Milky Way.
Looks beautiful. Yeah,
Pony version.
So the other part of the piece that I really liked, I mean, we're not even going to get to the ponies because I don't know. I just really like the entire scene around them. Like I love the way that he's done the trees, but I guess we should talk about the ponies because we're a pony show. So I think that in general, one of my favorite things is the expression on the filly's face, which is like the teeny tiniest little thing when you consider this entire piece, but they've got like huge gigantic eyes. And it's great. It looks amazing. They're just like so scared at the ghost story that Rainbow Dash is telling, because this is based off of of course, Sleepless in Ponyville episode.
Scarediness intensifies.
Mm-hmm.
Scootaloo's
eyes are just like
that's my favorite of the three. Scootaloo is really good. Yeah. It's also partly because half of her body's in shadow, which you can see like the back half of her body's in shadow, but it looks like her body's just this tiny little like orange thing with a little orange wing.
Yeah. Yeah, she looks so teeny.
Applejack's also really cute, lighted really well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I was gonna say, oh yeah, the scene, the ponies, focusing on those. It's funny because I have things to say that's not about them.
Well, can I just mention one more thing about the characters then before you move on then?
Go for it.
I just wanted to also mention rarity in this piece because we've talked before about not being afraid to put your characters in shadow, and in this case, Husi took it to another extreme and said, I'm not even going to make the character face the camera. So, you know, in order to make a complete scene, what he's done is he's said, you know, obviously one of them would be sitting on this side. So we have Rarity kind of lounging back, facing away from the camera, not being lit very well, you know, but
yeah, I like
it's
that
good.
Touch.
It's a nice touch, like you were saying, and it creates a more complete and realistic is the wrong word, but more of a natural scene to it.
Yeah.
Where they all aren't crowded around one side of it. So, you know, again, don't be too afraid to put your characters in the dark or have them face away as long as it's within the right context.
It's much more like real life. With like Rarity being backlit and facing away from us, even in like classical artwork. Before it was always, you know, people placed facing us and we can see them and like the side of their face, and they're all meticulously placed next to each other, where eventually there was this period where it was like, that's not how real life works. How we place someone and make them feel like they're actually within the scene is we turn people away from them, and like people's backs realistically would be turned to you. So as soon as you do that, it's another sense of immersion and placing you in a scene, and it seems much less set up, if that makes sense.
Exactly.
And it does. It feels like we're in here, like looking, you know, like, I don't know, bug's eye view, looking up at the sky, looking up at them.
Yeah, less setup is a great word, and it kind of plays off the whole like thing that I was talking about, making it look natural.
Yeah. The point I was going to point out is just really quickly, like Husi's painting. Oh my gosh. Like I'm always constantly in love with it. Everything about it. It's always just colors, like thrown on colors. And I was going to say my favorite little touch is the really, really bright orange tossed randomly on things in the background around the ponies. So like on the log Applejack's sitting on the ground around the campfire, on like the bottom of the tent, and little touches of like orange light hitting, you know, the plants and stuff to the left, and it even goes all the way almost to the tree. And it's touch of the bright orange light from the campfire being casted on things, like flicking on things, and it's just, I thought that was a really, really awesome touch.
It's like almost like someone is flicking paint, like orange paint.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's the light.
Is just Hussey as a digital painter is just super awesome, because it almost looks like a traditional painting, how he like works up his image, and how everything else everywhere is, you know, really muted colors and more like backlit things, like the tree in the foreground, like right in front of us, how like all that color is being being backlit and all the stuff. It's really cool.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah. All right. Anyway, moving forward. Close. So our next piece is Nighttime by Otaku AP.
So this one is a personal favorite of mine, because it's based off of a game that came out last year called Don't Starve. And when it was in like the earliest alpha stages, I played a little bit of it, and I haven't played it in a long time, but it was a fun game. And around this time, I believe, so when did this come out? Like last summer, Otaku made this little piece based on it. And it looked really good, and it was strangely, like, it was in his style, but really not. And I felt like he was kind of going out of his comfort zone, but I really enjoyed that. And I like the fact that he decided to try something a little bit different while not being too crazy different. But, you know, it's very sketchy looking. It's obvious the character's eyes are based on the Don't Starve character's eyes. And the same with the moth's eyes. They're kind of related back to the game, and that's kind of like a reference to it. But yeah, I really like it. They
really go well together, like that, the style and like the eyes with the moth. Like the moth's so good, it makes it.
Yeah. He definitely chose the right kind of stylistic kind of like it's like a tight sketch for all of the outlines.
Because I really like that, how he left it really sketchy too, and then like put color underneath that, because it's not like anything else in his gallery, you know? I really like when artists will go out of their way and try to make things in like other artist styles, or a style of something else. Like in this case, it's an artistic style of a game. And so, because it's always that artist's take on it, because the artist can never directly like physically copy it, you know? So it's always the artist's hand trying to make something that's similar to that style. So like you were saying, it looks like Otaku's work, yet it's really like sketchy and kind of grungy and done in that Don't Starve style. So like when Ian Knott started going out of his way to like kind of look at other artists' like style and imitate it, it ended up creating this weird, crazy like cross juxtaposition stuff of his style and like who's that? God, I can't remember names. The artist that we interviewed, yeah, that one, Gray Stripes work. Anyway. This piece, something else why it's really cool. It's not just a cross up between ponies and Don't Starve. It's actually a bunch of little cute crossovers that were relevant to the time when Otaku AP was gaming. So I remember I was talking to him about this, and he was playing a few games at the time, because you have a little, the obvious one is little Mario marshmallow right there, like on the stick, mushroom, whatever. It's supposed to be, I believe, a Mario mushroom. But also, the campfire that he's sitting in front of is a Dark Souls campfire.
See, I've gotten to a point now where people talk about it so much. Like, I've played a little bit of Dark Souls, the first one. Not really my game. So it's one of those games I look at and be like, that's well made. Don't particularly like it. Well, it's like League of Legends. I look at the game like, it's a well put together game. Don't like it. But yeah, usually nowadays, whenever there's something that I look at and I'm like, that's a reference to a popular game, but I don't know what it is. I'm like, it's probably Dark Souls. That's what it seems to be nowadays. Maybe it's just because the new one's coming out soon.
Dark Souls 2 is already out.
Oh,
Came out like 2 days ago.
Shows how much I actually know about it.
Thanks, Facebook.
I've been playing Titanfall, so okay.
No, look at you. Thanks, Twitch.
Fancy dancy. Yeah, but he did manage to stuff 3 of them in, and they all look really natural though, so that's cool. Like, he kept them in the same style, and there are campfires are really important in Don't Starve. So like the campfire itself is a Don't Starve campfire, but then it's got like the sword from Dark Souls, so that's cool. And like none of it feels forced. It's all very natural again. This episode's theme apparently is
Tall-
natural.
Natural. I don't know if anyone got that joke.
No.
It's I don't know, it's more or less of an inside joke. It's a really old blonde joke. Don't worry about it.
Excuse me?
So there's this blonde joke, right?
No,
Where
don't go on.
it's-
No, don't go on.
It's like talking about blondes.
This
And they're all
is-
talking about like their blonde hair color.
Mhm.
And then there's this one chick who has really green hair. And
Right.
the chicks are like talking to her like, oh god, your green hair looks so pretty. And he's like, oh yeah, it's all. And then she like puts her hand on her nose like, and wipes it through her hair. Natural. And that's the joke.
Oh.
Yep.
That's gross.
I know.
Why did you
Yeah.
go on? I told you not to.
Because he said.
All right, now go on, but about something different, please.
Clouds. I like the angles of the clouds and like the moon because it kind of like radiates outwards. It's not like normal placement of clouds. It's not that like flat horizon line clouds because you have like obviously the flat horizon. Then the clouds themselves are creating kind of like this little roundedness that kind of follows the angle of his jaw and the angle of the sword. I don't know.
Yeah.
Thought it was a nice touch other than just putting like flat clouds.
Yeah. Well, the cool thing about Don't Starve is that there's like a whole huge backstory to it. And I mean, I haven't played in like a year, so the game is like quadrupled in features. But basically the feeling that you get there is that you're like alone in this world and you'll meet other people, but no matter what, it always feels like there's like this big focus on you. Like there's like this hidden thing, almost like as the character, you feel like you're being watched, even though funnily enough you are because you're playing the game and watching this character. And
Super meta.
so it kind of gives this sense of like the clouds are kind of going like circling around the moon, which is shining down on you, you know, like so it looks like it's the moon is staring at you.
Ooh, and in this it does kind of look like the moon staring at him. How it's angled.
Also, it's got this like little like face thing. There's like two light circles that are like eyes, and then there's like the darker circle. It's like, oh. There's a couple of faces on there. A couple of them are terrifying,
Yeah.
but that's just my imagination.
All right.
The moon scares me.
The moon is scary.
24 hours remaining.
Oh god, I've never played that game.
Shout out to anyone who actually gets that reference.
Was that? Oh, I clicked Zelda. Did I get it?
That's cheating. You did get it. You did get it. Good job. Good job. Good job.
Yeah.
Speaking of jobs.
Damn you! Your subtle ways to tell me to move forwards. All right. So moving on, our next art piece is pony art piece, I should say, is called
Nice.
Golden Oaks Library. Is that actually what it's called? Golden Oaks Library?
Yep.
All right. Today I learned.
It's a tongue twister.
By Minibot-1.
Oh, did you mean like the actual place? Oh, I have no idea. I don't.
No. Who would name their piece Golden Oaks Library?
Well,
no, I meant like Twilight's Library is actually called Golden Oaks.
Yeah, I don't care enough.
I'm pretty sure it's just called Twilight's Library, right?
Twilight. That dump that we gave Twilight.
Yeah, that
When she
thing no
moved
one
in.
was using because who reads? Nerds.
Yeah. Wow. But yeah, so this one's a really nice piece. It was probably the first one that was on our list, and this one's been on our list for a while now to feature. And I think the very first thing I want to talk about is, again, this sense of not being afraid to put things in the dark, especially because it's at night, so stuff should be at the dark. But here, there's two light sources. There's the lantern on the left, which is barely giving off enough light, so we're going to forget about it for now. And then there's the moon, the nice little crescent moon, which looks very nice. And it's giving the moonlight that's coming towards the camera or the point of view. And so things are being backlit by it, which is done very well, and I'm sure Bernd will tell you all about that. But what it does is it places everything in this piece, except for like very few things by the lantern. All of it is in darkness, and all of it is backlit, and none of it is frontlit, which is
It's also
really
on
cool.
the exactly same plane.
That's true. That's also true.
So yeah, planes. Twilight's Library and the houses, like as they are being backlit, are on the what I would probably call the midground plane, and they all look like they are kind of placed in that area, which is interesting because as viewers, like viewing this piece, we're placed in some kind of hedge / windowsill thing, with what looks like flowers and leaves around it. It's kind of interesting. I don't know what's across the way from Twilight's library. I'm not going to pretend like I know.
It's super blurred.
Yeah, which is cool because, you know, focus and exposure.
Imitating
right?
cameras.
All
that jazz.
So yeah. And this does look like a very, you know, cinematically inspired, kind of imitating piece. Almost like concept art for a game or something. Maybe not. Maybe it's a bit of a stretch. But it's really cool. What's also interesting is the background, what would be like the background plane, which is, you know, like the moon, sky, and then those like trees and hills, what kind of look like they're behind, are very like subtle and almost non-existent. And they're there, like, and we can see them, but, you know, it's only like slight touches of them. So they're like kind of removed from the piece to where it's just this like Twilight's library placed with like the moon and the lighting interacting with that. And it's like the background and like the little bit of the foreground that's in our face are almost, you know, secondhand features of this as an image.
Yeah, they make the planes kind of subtle, and they make them like you're not told that there are planes there. Your brain, again, just your brain kind of like recognizes, okay, there's blurred stuff in the foreground, there's some really faded stuff in the background, so, and then suddenly your brain pops in and boom, we got a 3D piece. And in reality, you know, individually speaking, if we were to look at those two things, they're not a big deal of the piece, right? But just because they're there, they provide context and they make it look 3D when otherwise it would look very 2D.
I really like the amount of detail that went into everything in the scene, right? Because it's about ponies, but there's not specifically ponies in it. So it's really just about this kind of scene, and it's not more traditionally digitally painted, if I can use that term. It's not like what we saw in Hussy's work, where it was a lot of, you know, like heavy-handed, loose brushwork. It's very tight, very clean, very neat brushwork. There's not a lot of play with like transparency and stuff like in Hussy's work. It's like flat planes of color placed with like more and more and more values and changes and shifts in color. Like the leaves in Twilight's library, like holy crap, there's a lot of shades of green in there.
Yeah.
And like the hay in the top of the pony huts, I suppose. Or what those are.
I don't know. We don't talk about the pony huts.
Yeah.
That one really lumpy
cool.
one.
And like, I don't know if I guess we can talk about the lighting, backlighting again, right? Where it's like, because it's dark, the stuff on the edges is really bright, and exposure and cameras and junk. We've kind of,
I mean, that's just kind of how lighting
past.
works. So if people don't know that by now, then I guess we could give a quick refresher. But see what they do in this piece? That's what backlighting is.
It's more like this is a good example of said backlighting.
Yeah.
Also, what's interesting is that hut on the left, it looks like the top of it is being backlit by the moon, but the chimney and right-hand side of the hut are not being backlit because the tree is blocking the moon's light, which is interesting because that means it's placed like more forward on the plane. However, as it stands in the background, like bottom of the hut, it doesn't look like that.
Well, there is a bit of a separation with that hill that kind of encroaches on the right side of the hut and how it kind of goes in front of the fence. So there is a little bit of 3D. I suspect it's
because of that like bush and the grass in front of the corner of it, it makes it look like it completely molds in and, you know, is uniform with that.
Yeah.
So like it's non-existent.
Yeah, I wonder if that was done on purpose in order to create this kind of like 3-plane approach.
Yeah. It's like the lighting is playing with, you know, depth and perspective, but yet how the image is painted.
And there's a lot of indications that it shouldn't be. Like there's a lot of conflicting information there in terms of like the chimneys say that the house should be very far in front, but the house itself looks like it would be on the same plane.
I like that though. Conflicting information is fun. And it's interesting because we look at it and we go like, how does work?
Yeah.
And it makes something a lot more interesting.
I mean,
it's not poorly done. Like that's really the key.
We have conflicts all the time, Bernd. I don't think it's bad.
Yeah. Oh, I was gonna tell you to like.
Yeah.
No. Yeah.
Well, we've been pretty nice to each other this episode, though.
I was gonna make I was gonna make like a satirical joke and then say something rude, like "oh, screw you" or something. But then I was like, censorship, don't swear.
So
and
witty.
Like my brain just like I know. That was the first thing that like came up into my head is like, gosh, we're nice to each other. It's like, go buck yourself. I don't know if I can say that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well then,
Like
Um,
bucking apples, right?
yeah. So, yeah, I mean, the piece is just one of those pieces that we've talked about the subtle stuff. Other than that, it's tight brushwork. It just does things very well. That's
Super
what it
tight
does.
brushwork.
It just looks aesthetically pleasing, and I mean that's really that about it. I mean the lighting isn't nothing's super complex. The idea of the planes is interesting in terms of like the subtleties behind it, but
yeah, but it's relatively simple, you know.
yeah, it's
like
very
plain
simple.
work rather.
Art
but it's very
is
very
not
clean.
simple apparently.
Well, yeah, you know what I mean. It's not overly complex and confound. It's pleasant to take in, and it is. It's very clean, like well kept brushwork, and a very neat job.
So I heard something recently to do with how long art takes and kind of the way that you have to think about it, because you look at things like this, and let's say Minibot made this in 4 hours.
Days.
Let's say 4 hours, right? What you have to realize is, let's say he's been doing art for 10 years. This art piece took 10 years and 4 hours to make. And I thought that was an interesting idea to think about, because a lot of times artists will look at something and be like, wow, they can do that in 1 hour, and I couldn't do that in a year. And it's like, well, they didn't do it in 1 hour. They did it in 15 years in 1 hour, you know? Like, I thought it was an interesting concept. Do you have any thoughts about that?
No, I just think it's a very good point, because it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, gosh, like this artist makes it look so easy. It's like, yeah, well, when you do something for like 15 years, you make it look easy.
Yeah.
It's the same kind of thing like any kind of extreme sport or like skiing or snowboarding. It's like, God, they make like 3 double backflips look so easy. It's like, yeah, well, they're like 32 and they've been doing it since they're 12, you know?
Yeah.
Art's the same kind of concept where it's like, wow, I've been doing this for so long and making these things and practicing these things and finding out information about these things and learning about these things and doing these things and going to school and getting in debt because of all these things. You eventually become good at something.
You're always progressing with this stuff too, right? So
yeah, it's like a trill. Like the work he started to make in 2010 was like bunk. It was like simple like sketches and stuff and like drawings and like anthro. And then every single day of his bloody pony life, he kept drawing and painting and making 30-minute challenges. And now look at him. He's like a master among ponies.
Yeah.
Because of all the bloody work he did.
He had prior art experience beforehand, so it's a little bit. There's a couple of other artists out there who have started immediately with their art career with ponies, and it's amazing how quickly that can go if you really put in the time and the effort, right?
Yeah. But I do like that concept though of like 15 years of my life and an hour.
Yeah. Because technically that's you know, like it's not the fact that it's not this person who can sit down and do this for an hour, you know? It's a accumulation of all of their experience.
I mean, that's almost like saying like this is, or like if someone's like, oh, I made this really bad art piece. It's like, oh, you made the worst art piece of your life so far. Like, you know that term where it's like, no, I think it's from The Simpsons. It's like, no, this isn't the worst day of your life. This is just the worst day of your life so far.
Yeah.
Like tussle hair.
Yeah. So
okay.
I suppose I wanted to bring that up just because I was looking at it and I looked at something that like made it look so simple, and we were talking about simplicity, and it reminded me of that concept, and I think it's a good concept to bring up because a lot of times people can get discouraged with it, and you have to remember that this art piece Rome wasn't built in a day, okay? First, there had to be Romans, and then they built Rome.
And ponies. I had a really good transition for this piece, but I totally forgot what it was. It was like something like, this job, or this painting or something looks like really well done, like a job well done and clean or something, and I don't know. Duh.
Well, Bernd, in occasions where we can't come up with a transition, there is a tradition that we normally do around these parts.
Yell at Joel?
Yeah, yes. But there's a better tradition, and that one is a dusk shine transition.
Oh my God. I hate you so much! God damn it. Why am I not editing this week?
And now we're in the questions section. So welcome to the questions section. I am your questions master for this week. My name is RainbowPlasma. We're suddenly at the beginning of the show again. So yeah, we have questions.
My name's RainbowPlasma and I suck eggs.
And and when we say questions, we mean question, because there's only one question. So we have one question today, and it was something that I thought we could expand more on, especially because we've got 2 chatterboxes today. So there's one question, and it's a long one. It's from Nazagoring, long-time listener.
Is it Nazagoring or Nazagorang?
I don't know. Either way.
I think it's Nazagorang. She's Australian, isn't she?
Nazagorang. Something like that. Anyways,
Australian?
she says, "Hi guys, I have a question for your show. I've had issues lately concerning unwanted critique regarding my art. I do not request or desire them, and I find them upsetting at times. If someone does not request a critique, is it appropriate to make one on a work of art? And what is the difference between a critique and a negative remark?"
Very good question.
Very good question. Would you like to start this one off, Bernd, with the first one, which is it appropriate to make a critique for someone who does not request it?
So that's something I've been conflicted about for a while, especially since like when I started in the pony art community, I was a vector artist, right? Because there's a very thin line in vectors. There's like 3 kinds of vectors. You have extremely really good like custom likely made vectors that took like hundreds of hours to make, and then you have your average vector that like anyone can make and it's like exact and perfect. And then you have really crappy vectors. Like there's no in between. There's crappy vectors, good vectors, and then insanely amount of hour vectors.
Custom ones, yeah.
Yeah, that like vectors like by
Zoo the Skunk,
or whatever that guy is.
Zoo the Skunk.
That's a good example. Like some of the stuff he's made. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Anyway, so I mean, it's really hard to like see a vector that is blatantly bad or has some kind of mistake, and it's like, because it has a mistake, it's inherently a bad vector, because vectoring is a thing of perfection, and it's really easy to fix those mistakes. And as far as like being an artist and like making art, fixing a vector is insanely simple and easy compared to fixing like actual like handmade traditional artwork.
Much more objective as opposed to subjective.
Yeah, you just fix it, and it comes with like simple knowledge. And like I can teach anyone how to make a good vector, because all it takes is a little bit of effort to learn something, where it doesn't take hundreds of years of your life to learn art specifically. You just learn how to trace something.
Right.
So with that mindset of like it's really easy to critique a vector and help someone get better, it's insanely easy to critique a vector and people be okay with it, because it's like, hey, you can make this better by just doing this, man. Like, I'm just trying to help you, blah, blah, blah. But when we're talking about like artwork, like, is it okay to do like appropriate to like critique an artwork if someone didn't ask for it? And I think I don't know, it's a bit of a double standard. Like, I feel like it's not okay, and I wouldn't go out of my way to do it because I would never want to offend someone. But like now that I've been in like art college or in, you know, being in vectors and stuff, it's like to a certain part, it almost is okay. But, and so you can say like, hey, and I feel like, let me word it this way. I feel like someone has every right to critique something, just as someone has every right to be offended by that critique. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
so like,
I guess.
I feel like it's your right if you want to accept a critique or not, but it's also any kind of viewer's critique to either share their opinion mindfully about art, or comment on that art, or even offer a critique on that art, depending on the notion of the critique. Because like it's the same thing. There's constructive critique, there's harmful critique, and there's just critical critique.
Yeah.
Like critical critique, tearing something to pieces and, you know, being like generally rude about it. Harmful critique is something that's like you're actually trying to hurt the person, or it's like false or wrong. And then there's just like constructive critique where you're trying to be like actually genuinely helpful. So I don't know. This was an insanely hard question for me, and a really deep question, because I have so many like thoughts on, you know, critiquing in general that I don't know. What's your 2 cents? Maybe I'll help form all these things in my head together once I hear you talk.
My 2 cents are, I'm going to kill the dog across from the hall because it's barking. But I'm going to ignore that urge and go on about this. I think what you talked about, you came up with kind of like a phrase, and I want to kind of narrow that down a little bit. I think it's completely legitimate for someone to give unwarranted critique. So you don't ask for critique, but they give you a critique. I think it's completely warranted for them to do that, so long as it's completely warranted for you to say, I did not ask for this, so whatever. You know? That's hard to do, though, because you have to have very thick skin, because the second part of the question was, what's the difference between a critique and a negative remark? And the fact of the matter is, a lot of people on the internet don't know the difference between them. There's a distinct difference between them, but it's just... A lot of people are super negative because they don't understand the consequences of stuff. I know Nazagoreng's particular situation. She had made a plushie pattern, and she spent like a lot of her life making plushies, and then she upgraded her plushie pattern to a different thing because she wanted to do that, and then people were like, I like the old one better, you should go back to it. But people were not nice about it. So there's a difference between going like, hey, yeah, I happen to like the old one, but I don't know, it's a weird statement, because I would never find myself in a position where I would talk to someone else and be like, hey, I prefer the old one, just wanted to let you know, other than in like, you know, like a private conversation, just being like, hey, this is my opinion, or, you know, like, don't take it too personally. Maybe I'm just a nice person, but there's a lot of people out there who will be like, you should change it back, it's awful, I like the old one. And it's like, people don't have that barrier in between critique and negative remark. So if you are not asking for critique, right, and DeviantArt, it's very easy. You can specifically request a critique on your art, although that might just be for premium members, in which case it is. But like, so if you don't ask for a critique, right, you have to be aware of the fact that people will give you unwarranted critique, but you have every right to ignore that just as much as they have every right to randomly post it, even though you didn't ask for it. And I think it's important to there's a combination, especially on the internet, when you're prevalent on the internet, and I've experiencing this not because I've been prevalent on the internet, but because I've been surrounded by it a lot in the last 5 years of my life. You have to simultaneously develop a thick skin, but also be able to extract the good out of the sea of meh that is internet comments. No matter what website you're on, no matter what website you're on, there's the comments are gonna be meh in general.
Just a giant sea of meh.
Could be negative, or it could be not helpful or whatever. So you have to have a thick skin to be able to wade through the sea of meh and pull out some constructive things in it. And it's a part of putting yourself out there. It's an unfortunate part, and I'm not saying it's right, but unfortunately it's kind of something you have to do. And being an artist is putting yourself out there. But you have every right to ignore those critiques or not take those critiques into account, just like they have every right to say whatever they want on the internet.
Like, I'm a huge advocate of like a good critique or a bad critique, like the right way to critique. And there's a right way to like talk about art or talk to someone about their art, you know?
Yeah.
So
there is.
I don't know.
You have to recognize when someone's just being a jerk, you know? Like when someone is, you have to make the distinction between this person is just focusing on all the negatives, or this person is genuinely trying to help me. And there is no way in the world I could tell you the difference. It just takes experience, like reading through a bunch of comments, getting a bunch of feedback, and then going, okay, that was good, that wasn't good, and just getting experience from it. It's part of being on the internet, is you have to be able to take that and analyze it and figure out which ones are constructive and which ones aren't, because people aren't going to tell you if they're not constructive, you know? Like, people aren't going to be like, yo, by the way, I have these opinions, but they're not relevant to you, so just ignore them, you know?
Yeah, I just don't like you. This isn't going to help you, but I just don't like you.
So you have to, it's a skill that you have to learn if you're going to put yourself out there on the internet. And because
sometimes even critiques, it's like it's opinion because someone doesn't like said work. So sometimes even critiques are negative remarks because that individual doesn't like the work you've done, or it's not their taste. So the second part of that question, like, what is the difference between a critique and a negative remark? Like, there's a fine line there too, because sometimes negative remarks that are made are technically critiques, and then sometimes critiques are like a wrong kind of critique or an opinionated critique, and then they're negative remarks. So it's like, again, like you said on DeviantArt, like you have to have that thick skin, but also as a poster and like as a commenter, you have to keep in mind like the kind of stuff you post on the internet. Like, don't be a jerk. Like there's a right kind of critique and being mindful and saying something that's not going to be offensive or trying to offer constructive feedback or constructive criticism at worst case. And then there's also a fine line between being a jerk or offending someone. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I've been in and around internet popularity, and I've been really interested in the whole idea of that for a lot of my like adult life. So or teenage and adult life. So like I have a lot of experience in this kind of thing, and from my experience so far, you have to really have a thick skin for that kind of stuff. And unfortunately, there's no real good way to do it. At some point, if you get popular enough, you are going to get a bunch of negative people. I don't know why. People are negative, I guess. But you have to kind of remove yourself from that situation. And if you're feeling affected by it, then you need to find coping mechanisms for it, because otherwise it will tear you apart. I know there's a very popular YouTuber. It's from the Ogscast, and I read something that was made by the head of the Ogscast. His name is Lewis Brindley, and he said once that YouTube comments, and this applies to every comment section, but YouTube comments can be like death by 1,000 cuts, because each individual comment by itself you might be able to brush it off, but it leaves a little tiny cut on you. And like if you let them get to you over and over and over again and don't remove yourself from the situation, suddenly you've got a lot of like 1,000 people, doing that. So there's a lot of, unfortunately, this is more about coping mechanisms. I can't change what people post on the page, but you have to. A coping mechanism is kind of learning to not let it get to you, and making sure that you kind of learn the skills necessary to be able to differentiate between someone who's leaving a stupid comment and someone who's trying to provide constructive criticism that is different to your opinion.
Yeah. All right. Well, we have talked a ton, and today it would be a good time to transition, but I don't want to. I want to ask you, so these two questions specifically, how would you like answer them in like a simple wrap up, just like maybe a 1 or 2 sentence thing? Like, how would you just answer them, like what you feel would be a good answer for the first question and the second question?
Okay, so if someone does not request a critique, is it appropriate to make one on a work of art? Appropriate's a weird word, but I think it's completely legitimate for someone to do so, but it's also just as legitimate for you to ignore it because it was unwarranted. So there's no reason why you need to take it to heart or consider every single critique that is unwarranted. And what is the difference between a critique and a negative remark? That is very hard to pinpoint, and that's one of the skills you have to learn. But generally speaking, a constructive criticism will be from someone who is genuinely trying to help you get better, and a negative remark is just someone who's blurting out a thought and isn't thinking about what they're doing. All right, so there's your answer to your questions. Very long-winded, but I like talking about it, that kind of stuff.
That's a good question.
Yeah, if people want to talk to me about internet popularity, not that I have that, but I've been around it / have studied it.
We are so horse famous. Are you kidding?
So much horse famousness.
So much horse points.
Then yeah, feel free to talk to me about it because it's a subject that interests me in particular. So yeah, quick little plugs, and then we have one more thing to talk about. So we have a DeviantArt page, cutieartcrusaders.deviantart.com. We have a Twitter at cutieartcrusade, Facebook /cutieartcrusaders. Gmail, cutieartcrusaders@gmail.com. If you want to send in questions, that's where you can send it, plus all the other stuff like that. Now, Bernd, you had an announcement that you wanted to make quickly.
I did have an announcement. That announcement is going to start off with our theme for next week. And our theme for next week is actually pretty exciting, and it's something I wanted to do and not just brush off. But big, like, drum roll here. Our theme for next week is going to be Crab Battle Part 2, The Recrabbing.
Crab Battle!
Yes.
Crab Battle.
So for next week, we're going to return to the Crab Battle. I've been playing with the word of I think I like recrabbing. Recrabbing. Crab Battle Part 2, The Recrabbing.
Well, you're editing it, so I'm not. You can figure that out yourself.
So we'll stick with that. And And it's gonna, because there's been a lot of crab battle artwork that's came out after our like original crab battle, and people really like that, so they've been requesting it. So we're gonna do it again. But it's also gonna be something special, and we wanted to make the announcement this week. And that was something we've been like, an idea we've been tossing around, was we really want to do content generated episodes. And an example of that is like in our like fan art episode, like our first one, where we went out of our way to ask like our viewers for fan art of our show. And like people made a ton, and it was crazy. So we want to do something like that and see if we can make like fan generated episodes, because it gives us, one, a chance to interact with our fans, and two, it gives us a chance to highlight our fans and highlight works by artists who actually watch our show, which is like really important to us. So we want to try to create a fan content generated episode about Crab Battle. So what that entails is that we would like to ask you guys, the viewers, to create anything to do with Crab Battle. We're not asking for artwork of us, like if it has us in it, like we're not going to deny you, but we want to have a art generated episode specifically made by like people who watch our show, and make it for this reason, so we can highlight you and your work. And it's also giving a chance for maybe like lesser known artists and stuff to like, you know, get on our show and blah blah and get a shout out. So we want to have a Crab Battle episode part 3, the fan crabbening, or I don't know, we'll think of some creative name.
Wow.
Where like you guys make Crab Battle artwork, send it into us, and then we'll feature it and talk about it on our show.
So yeah, if you want all of the details, Bernd will be putting up a journal on the Cutie Art Crusaders DeviantArt account. So head over there and check out our journals. There's also a link
in the description.
For that journal. So head there for all the details, including the dates you can submit by, what exactly you should be submitting, and if you just zoned out there for a second, like I do sometimes, and didn't catch all the details, then you can head there. And yeah, we'll be prepping that. That's about a month away, so get your crab battling started.
Yeah, I'll give you the exact date. It's like 3 weeks or something from now, like 3 whole weeks. But that's something cool that we're going to attempt to do. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But if it does, it'll be really cool, and we'll get some of you guys on our show. So
right, cool. All right, well, next week is Crab Battle Part 2. So look forward to that. We should have some fun with that. Yeah, we've got a lot of fun stuff coming up in the future, but we'll tell you about that more as we go along. Bernd, this was an episode. We managed to make it through an entire hour with just us.
We actually went over that hour.
We went way over that hour, but that's fine. Anyways, thank you guys for listening, whether or not you're on the live stream or on YouTube. We love you all the same. I said LuTube. It's YouTube. Anyways, my name is RainbowPlasma.
My name's Bernd01.
And we will see you guys next week, or for the spoiler cast right after this.
See you in 5 seconds.
Hello and welcome to the Cutie Art Crusaders spoilercast of episode 18, Mod Pie. I am AtmosSpark, and today I am joined by Mr. RainbowPlasma here.
A very impressed RainbowPlasma, might I say, because you got that intro on the first time, and I'm pretty sure that's the first time you've ever done an intro.
I think I've done it. I don't think I've done it for a spoilercast. I've done it for an episode, but not for a spoilercast, I think.
Oh, did you do the one where it was just you and Bernd?
I think I did that one, and I think I've done one other one. I think you weren't here for it though.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But good job.
But yeah, so yeah, it's just the two of us because what is it? Flutter Guy was on a plane. Oh no, he's at a dinner tonight, isn't he? He's not here. Yeah. Whatever it is, he's not here.
He's at a birthday dinner. He got off his plane either last night or today, but he's out at a birthday dinner with his parents, so he can't make it. And Bernd is lazy and doing other things.
He just plain doesn't like us.
Yep, that's what I always think. You know, whenever he doesn't talk to me for 5 minutes.
Yeah, I'm living in fear that Bernd just doesn't want to talk to me one day. He'll just go, nah, don't want to talk to you anymore. And then my life will be sort of missing a lot. I'll be sad.
Well, that's debatable. But...
Well, I died a little inside when he cut his hair.
That's true. It's true. I was reborn, so thanks. Anyway, so this episode, Maud Pie, where we learn about Pinky's mysterious third sister, who really, really likes rocks.
She loves her rocks.
To be fair, though, based on her reactions, I don't know if she actually does like rocks or not. She seems to.
She does seem to enjoy. At least she knows a lot about rocks.
There are rocks involved in some way. That's all we know.
I guess she's kind of like a geologist in that way. They don't love rocks, but they know rocks.
What did they say? It was like a rockologist of...
I don't know. I completely missed that.
Yeah, there's some sort of pun joke about that.
There were many puns. I loved the puns.
Oh, she's getting her she's getting her doctorate in rock science.
That's the one.
That's what it was.
She's getting her doctorate.
That was a good pun, and it was one of many kind of deadpan humor moments of this episode, which was just kind of the entire thing over and over and over again, was just deadpan humor after deadpan humor. And I didn't realize it at the time when she said that, but that was foreshadowing for the kind of humor that was present throughout the entire episode.
Oh yeah, it was. She was a very good character. She played her character very well.
Yeah. It's funny because when they kind of set up these big character introductions, I kind of instinctively like flash back to like Cadence every single time, because I have this like cringy moment where I'm like, no, don't bring in a bad character. I want Happy, and so I'm like, no, don't make her sister be really mean and like them have to deal with it. So it's nice to see some sort of alternative to it where it isn't like the character's bad. She's just very different.
Yeah. Well, I like that she's the complete opposite of Pinky, but still her sister. Because I guess that kind of plays with her sort of Pinky's past, where it was all grey and dull and not very exciting when she was a filly, and then the party happened, and then everyone was all happy and bouncy and jumpy and happy, and then when Pinkie Pie left, it all went back to being glum and dull and rock farm.
Yeah. Well, obviously, Maud wasn't terribly entranced by her first party.
Well, Maud wasn't actually present for her first party.
That's true. She hasn't been present up until now. Well, actually, she showed up in a picture.
Yes, I was going to
back in the Pinkie Pie and cheese sandwich episode.
Yes, I was thinking of that. Was she the one in that photo? Was that foreshadowing?
I think it was. Like, there's no reason why she would have a fourth sister. Like.
Because she definitely wasn't in that first episode, well, the Cutie Art Chronicles episode where Pinky did the party. Because I had a contact of mine, Silver Ring Clouds, go back and have a look at that episode, and she wasn't in there. They were
to answer your
very similar,
go ahead.
very similar colored characters, but not Maud.
Yeah, at her first party, they only showed her two sisters, who I guess the fandom is named Inky and Blinky.
Mm-hmm.
But when you look at the picture that was taken of when she looked at the photo in the cheese sandwich episode, there's a third sister, and that third sister is in fact Maud. Like, I'm looking at the picture right now, and it's Maud. Like, this was 100% intentionally done foreshadowing.
That's good.
Which is interesting.
Like that.
It's interesting. I don't know why they did that, other than to purposefully make that foreshadowing. You know what I mean? Like there's no reason. We don't know the other two sisters. So, like, there's no reason to be like, oh, yeah, we need a third one that's different,
Yeah.
So I was confused. I was a little bit confused about why they would just have a third one. But it makes sense that it kind of, like, built hype up. Like, they knew what they were doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
She picked up the picture and put it to her face and was like, you're supposed to look at this.
Yeah.
So obviously they knew what they were doing. But I heard a theory that said that they didn't want to trample all over her other sister's personalities, so they just made a third one.
that is also my theory, that because the fandom has come up with these names and they're so intrinsically linked to the fandom Inky and Blinky that they kind of can't really do anything with those characters now because they're so fandom based. And if they do anything that's, Inky and Blinky but give them other names, the fandom will lose its...
They'll get criticism, that's for sure.
Criticism, and if they use the fandom names, we have the Derpy fiasco all over again.
Yeah, you could potentially have some bad stuff there.
Yeah, copyright and losing stuff, and so I guess that's why they need to introduce this third character, and it's good that they did that in the cheese sandwich episode rather than just straight out, here's a brand new character.
Yeah, I mean, like, at this point with the whole Shining Armor fiasco, we should be expecting every single character to have about 8 brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
And they just don't talk about them. But yeah.
But
I don't know, like...
Yeah.
Good.
I just like that they did that. They put this new pony in that photo so that we get a glimpse of it and it's not just straight away, hey, look, he's a sister that I've never ever mentioned before and I have no past with, but I love her.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So, I mean, I do really like her character. She was completely different to any kind of character that we've seen before on the show, which is awesome. And I don't know, she kind of delivered that humor really, really well. Which is good to see. I mean, the fandom are anointing her new princess of the entire
everything
fandom, as the fandom does for every single new character. Best thing ever until the next thing comes along. We're all 6-year-old girls at heart, apparently. But I think she was a lot of fun, and I think they played her really well too, because there were a lot of instances where she's very deadpan, and that can come off like it did in the episode as like not caring about things. Like, for example, she went back home because she felt like she wasn't in she didn't feel at home there with Pinkie Pie's friends and stuff like that. And I don't know, sometimes that can come off as kind of like overly harsh or antisocial or something like that. But there were a couple moments during the episode where she kind of explained herself or said something that kind of backed up the fact that she's just not expressive. For example, one of the last lines of the entire thing was saying, like, the whole gesture of, oh, you don't eat your necklaces, to some people might be like, wow, what a jerk. But then they pulled off it's like, oh, I don't really like candy, but I love
my
Pinkie
sister.
Pie. Yeah, it's kind of like the redeeming qualities. So it's not just like, look at how silly this different personality is. It's so stupid. Let's just have a lesson about it, and then she'll just be weird somewhere else.
on that ending, like on the ending of that episode, which I thought was probably one of the most adorable things ever, was that she did the little smile right at the end. And I felt that whole episode of her not making any emotion, of her just like Kristen Stewarting the whole episode. And then right at that end, she does that little smile, and it makes the whole episode fantastic. Because she doesn't show emotion, but she does when she is talking about her sister, because she loves her sister.
Yeah.
And
I definitely do think that they played up the lesson in particular really well. Too.
Well, they did it, but they didn't go over the top with it. It was still subtle.
Right.
Like, I mean, yeah, there was that. There's always that, talking about what we learned in the lesson, etc. Because it is still a little girls' show. But the fact that they did that, and then there was still a couple of minutes left of the episode where they did all this other subtle stuff, which I loved.
Yeah. There's I guess the lesson that they were trying to get across is that sometimes you won't always get along with friends of friends, but the whole point is that you're friends with this person, so that's what you have in common. And it's really, I feel like that's a really relevant lesson to any. The cool thing about MLP I find is a lot of the times they've got really relevant lessons, not just for little girls, but in general. I think a lot of lessons that people might not have learned, or effective things. And I think that's a great point that I'd never really thought about before when you think of friends of friends, and how you interact with things. And what I thought halfway through the episode, which kind of matched up with that, was when they talked about the rock candy necklaces. I looked at that and I said, that wasn't for Maud or for them. That was for Pinkie Pie. The whole making the rock necklaces, like, that more than anything was for Pinkie Pie's sake, because Pinkie Pie thought that was a really important thing to do.
Exactly.
And again, that kind of common bond between everyone was the fact that they know Pinkie Pie.
Mm-hmm.
It was a really relevant lesson. It was a really good lesson that I think anyone could learn from. And in the future, I'm going to try to apply that lesson, like thinking about situations. You know, like when those situations come up where you're meeting via a mutual friend. You know, talk about the mutual friend, because that's something you have in common with people. You know, if you can't find something else to get along with, it's a great point.
That's right. I mean, you're both friends with this person for a reason, so you must have something else in common.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, with these characters and with Maud, not a whole lot more than just, you know, we are both friends with Pinkie Pie.
Yeah.
But, yeah. In real life, it's not usually like that. Normally you have something, and I guess because Pinkie Pie and Maud are sisters, they didn't really choose each other to be friends, but they love each other because they're sisters. Whereas in real life, you can sort of pick your friends, and you would pick people that have similar qualities to each other. So you should be able to have something in common with your friends' friends.
Yeah. Yeah. I also, you know, I like the kind of consistent theme throughout the show of showing two different personality types getting along in their own special little way.
Yeah.
Because, you know, that's how life works. Everyone's so complex, and everyone has a different relationship with each other, and they have their own little dynamics. And it's not always like, oh, look, those two are super best friends, or they wouldn't get along at all. You know, sometimes, for whatever reason, against all odds, someone like Pinkie Pie and someone like Maud get along really well in their own little ways, you know? So, you know, it's a really good, consistent theme throughout MLP, and it's something that I'm glad that kind of continued through this episode.
Yeah. And now I think about it, we've said Maud's name quite a few times. I wonder if Maud is like the writers or the animators, whoever comes up with the names. That wouldn't be the animators, but the writers sort of shout out to Pac-Man. Maud, Clyde.
Yeah, I thought of that too. It's a bit of a stretch.
Bit of a stretch, but in my head, that's the thing. In my head, it's Inky, Blinky, Pinky, and Maud, Clyde.
There was a thing on Reddit that someone posted where there's like a poem done that was.
Is it about rocks?
It was
rock.
like it was something silly, like it was like Inkum, Blinkum, and Nod. It was an old poem. Winkin, Blinkin, and Nod. Popular poem for children written by American writer and poet Eugene Field and published on March 9th, 1889.
That's an old poem.
And to me, that sounds a little bit like crazy coincidence with the names.
I would say so.
It would be fun if somehow this old 1800s this old 1800 poem somehow had an influence. But it sounds like Maud is kind of one of those names that just kind of like flat. I mean, no offense to any mods in the audience, but traditionally speaking, it's kind of like flat, just kind of like when I think of Maud,
I think American Midwest.
I just think gray and flat and straightforward. You know, it's kind of like it's one of those names that's like an older name.
Yeah.
You know, like Gertrude or Eloise or something.
I actually know someone called Eloise.
Oh yeah. Well, it's like the names that were popular.
Yeah, like what you would traditionally
ago.
would think of like your grandmother's name.
Exactly. So, yeah, I just think they went for something that was like older and a little bit more dull and much like a rock. If there was ever a name to make me think of a rock, it would be Maud.
I don't know. Boulder's pretty good.
Boulder's pretty good. That's right. There was definitely some funny moments for there. And I saw someone mention that Rarity and Maud have more in common because they're both really into rocks.
I did see that one.
That was great. And I think someone else said, I can't believe they got the voice actor for Tom to come back for this episode. That was clever.
That was
Fair enough.
Good.
I'll give that one to the fans.
They were quite, I love a lot of her rock mannerisms that Maud does, or even just like rock stuff that she does. Like when she was gonna take a muffin, she takes the gem that fell off Rarity's hat and she ate it, and crunchy. And then Pinky did the muffin, and it was also crunchy, and that was just all hilarious. Maud was a very funny character.
She was definitely funnier than I thought she would be at the very beginning, but her reactions every single time just made me laugh out loud, and it was a perfect kind of dynamic, because regardless of the different personality types, I think maybe it's just because they've gotten so comfortable with each other, but all 6 of them are kind of outspoken and friendly and very open to talking to other people and things like that, and even Fluttershy nowadays. And then, this person comes along who's not kind of like energetic and totally up for any opportunity, and they're all just like completely stumped.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know what to do.
It's good to see that there are more dynamic personalities in the show rather than just the 6 outgoing, sort of happy, talking to everybody characters. It's good to see that there is one of those sort of withdrawn, quiet characters now. Because Fluttershy was always... Even though she was sort of quiet and withdrawn, she wasn't really, because she would always come out and talk to her friends, whereas this character doesn't really have anyone.
Well, here's the thing, and I saw someone bring this up before, and I just wanted to define this really quick before we stop the spoiler cast, because we're getting up on time here. I want to talk about the difference between introversion and confidence. So there's 4 words that are kind of linked together. Introversion, extroversion, and then confident and shy. Okay? Or shy and outgoing is another word, right? So people often associate outgoingness with...
confidence.
Outgoingness with extroversion and shyness with introversion. And what I want to tell people is that's actually not true at all. The majority of the time, they go together, but they're 2 separate things entirely. So people have brought up the fact that Twilight Sparkle might be outgoing. She's not afraid to have conversations with people, but she is also introverted, because shyness and outgoingness is about the confidence about when you're placed in new scenarios, how do you react, meeting new people, things like that. But introversion and extroversion is about your own preference. So introverted people prefer to be by themselves and enjoy quiet time and stuff like that, whereas extroverted people love being around other people and always want to, hang out with friends and stuff like that. I want to give that as a good example because I consider myself a very outgoing introvert. I like to talk to friends and I like to hang out with people, but in my own time and when I feel like I want to. I don't ever feel the urge to go out and do that, but I also consider myself quite the confident and outgoing person. So there is this difference between the two, and I think it's good for people to kind of recognize that, because everybody keeps pegging me as an extrovert when in reality I'm not, And I think it's the same thing here, Maud... people are putting this introverted extroverted label, and I don't think that she showed any signs of being introverted or extroverted or shy or outgoing. It's just almost like an energy level. It's something completely different,
So you'd associate, I guess, Fluttershy with being that sort of shy introvert? No, not really.
Again, like I wouldn't even... I would have to analyze it more in order to properly... figure out whether or not she's an introvert or an extrovert. I know for sure that she's shy.
Yeah, she's definitely shy.
Pinkie Pie is an extrovert.
Oh, yeah.
She always loves being around her friends. She wants to go out and do that,
Yeah.
But maybe Twilight's more of an introvert. She likes to be by herself and study.
Yep. There's definitely I guess a visualization of all of the good, of most of the different combinations of those 4. Like you got Rainbow Dash and Pinkie Pie are the 2 outgoing extroverts in the show. They love being with their friends, and they don't really like being alone, and they're always going to get sort of around their friends and with people and be happy and do stuff with them. But you've also got the opposite side. Like you've got the shy introverts, you've got the outgoing introverts.
Right. Yeah. So I just wanted to bring that up because I thought it was relevant to this kind of conversation. But yeah, that's everything I have to say about the episode.
And look at that, we're pretty much right on time.
Yeah.
Hey,
awesome.
Okay, so that was a spoiler cast for episode 18 of My Little Pony called Maud Pie. I am AtmosSpark.
I'm RainbowPlasma.
And that's it for this week. We will catch you next week.
See you next week, guys.
Bye.